Hello and welcome to the Great Big Indian Wellness Show. My name's Tony Patty and today's session is all about Kids Happy Corner. We're going to be talking about kids and their well-being and what is it that makes them happy and how can we help make them happy and what can we do to contribute to that. Now, anxiety and stress is something which is quite prevalent with children, and there are, from time to time, lots of different situations, and it can sometimes happen from the time when they are born. Babies getting hungry but not being able to express themselves. Also, toddlers trying to walk and speak and explore things, as we all do. And then children through the teenage years, going through school, friendship, peer pressure, and also independence and everything else that comes along with or part and parcel of growing up. So why is it essential to incorporate mindfulness from an early age? We're going to be learning all about that here today. So we're going to be looking at some of the common challenges that we are seeing kids go through today and what can we do to help them? And if the problem isn't tackled from an early age, what is the outcome of that? And is there enough being done in terms of mindfulness by the schools themselves? And what about techniques that we can actually install into our children's lives to give them a daily routine and make their lives a lot better and a lot happier too? So joining us today is Anjali Patel, founder, facilitator, storyteller, and also World of Children's Yoga, is the organization that Anjali is very much a part of. Now, Anjali is a lawyer, learning and development professional. She's also a mother and children's yoga teacher, and she draws her learnings from her experiences, as she believes solutions are not always one-dimensional. They can consist of several different elements. Based on that, she's actually found the ultimate guide to personal development, a practical toolkit to build physical and mental strength and healing too. And her aim is to share the wisdom of yoga with relevance in today's world that we live in, with children, their families, and the communities where they live. We also have Sunita Shah, who's an author and speech and also language therapist as well. And Sunita runs an organization called the JJs, and Together Let's Communicate Limited. Now, Sunita is the creator behind the JJs, a growing collection of books and resources for children centered around Hindu mythology. She's been a speech and language therapist for over 22 years. And Sunita's specialism in bilingualism is something very, very special indeed. And she's the national advisor for the Royal College of Speech and also Language Therapy. She delivers training to the NHS and educational and private establishments on supporting bilingual children. And with communication difficulties that children have, she helps with them as well. Sunita has her own independent practice for over 15 years and has a passion for helping children and families too. And we also have with us today Rupin Rach, who is a speaker and conscious parenting coach as well. Rupin's background is that he helps parents invite more loving connection into the relationship they have with their children and themselves and everyone around them. He gives parents the tools to bring mindful presence into every moment, combining Western psychotherapeutic understanding with Eastern mindfulness practices. And he was trained by New York Times bestselling author, Dr. Shefali as well. What an amazing panel of people we have with us today. Rupin Rach, Sunita Shah, and Anjali Patel. A very warm welcome to you, and thank you all for joining us here today on the Great Big Indian Wellness Show. Thank you. We're talking about children's wellness. We're talking about Kids Happy Corner on the Great Big Indian Wellness Show. Can I start with you first of all then, Anjali, with your background? What have you seen and the changes and challenges that you've seen with kids over the last decade or 2 decades or so, and from your experience?
So it's been in the last 7 or 8 years that I've really been working very closely with children through children's yoga. And I think some of the everyday practices that we see with children of increased challenges with emotional regulation. We've seen increased attention difficulties, so of some sort of hyperactivity or attention deficit disorders. We've seen, particularly in recent months, of course, isolation has played a big role in children and how able they are really to sit and to be able to engage with people, to be able to communicate easily. So I think emotions attention, and that ability to build relationships have probably been the three key things that have been more challenged over recent times and recent years.
Sunita Shah, as an author and speech language therapist, we as Indian, Asian people of South Asian origin, have a certain way of thinking in our lives. Communication with our children hasn't been the best, our children, because of our cultural backgrounds. What does that mean to you?
I think the way to kind of take that question is kind of individuality, I think, as well, because I think it's such a broad question. And I think the answer can be answered in different ways depending on types of parenting. And I think one thing that's really important is when kind of discussions come up is I've really started to think quite laterally about this, because I can get to see kind of the families that I've worked with and what their backgrounds are like, what their experiences has been and what their space has been. And we do quite a lot on cultural diversity in parenting. And one of the tiers for preschool intervention is parent-child interaction therapy. And parents have different roles throughout their whole day. First thing in the morning, I'm that rush mum. Get your shoes on, get your breakfast done. Have you got what you need for the day? Let's go. You haven't got time for those so-called mindful moments in that rush day. And then you come home and you can be the joker in the car and you take on the teacher role of kind of doing their homework and stuff. And I think it's about really tuning into your child what mood you are in as a parent. And I think I've been brought up quite differently, being kind of an Asian girl. I was brought up in Macclesfield, Cheshire, not in a kind of dominant Asian environment. And I went to a Catholic school. I had rosary beads in one hand and went to church and had my mala, my mandir in the other hand. And I think my parents were great at kind of understanding the diversity that we live in and incorporating that into how we live. And I think they got that balance of parenting really right, where I look at families that I work with and play is not a tradition in their family. So you have to adopt the models of intervention to be so unique to those families. And I think tuning into your child is important, but you've got to stop and reflect how you feel as a parent to how you're approaching your child. Because I know if I wake up or something's happened at work, it's hard not to take it out on the kids because you're in that mood that's like, ugh, and the whole environment can crash. So I think it really can depend on environment, personal experience, the mood that you are in, a parent, and the mood that the kids are in too. So
this leads me really nicely to talk about parents and the relationship with parents, because Rupin, you are a conscious parenting coach. And as you invite more loving connection into the relationship with your children, it's sometimes easier said than done, because as Sunita led us very nicely into this particular part of the question, the parent-child relationship is a huge one, but easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big responsibility for anybody to take on, is to be a parent and to have another life in your hands that looks up to you and actually relies on you all of the time. So it's a massive responsibility, and a lot of parents are just trying to get it done and to get through the day, get through the year, and to parent as best as they possibly can. The issue mainly arises from the fact that there isn't any entry requirements to be a parent at the moment, and that biologically, if you can have children, then you get to be a parent, and there's nothing stopping anybody from doing that. And then if you don't educate yourself and don't try to understand how to be a good parent, the only teachers that you've really had are your own parents and the way that you were parented once upon a time. So then a lot of unconsciousness creeps into the way that people parent, because they remember these kind of scenarios taking place and these kind of discussion points or questions being asked when they were younger. They remember the way that the adults around them responded, and they respond accordingly based on their own family history.
That's very interesting. Anjali, as a storyteller, founder, facilitator, and storyteller, you also run an organization called World of Children's Yoga. As far as common challenges are concerned that we're seeing with kids in the 21st century that we live in right now, here on the Great Big Indian Wellness Show, what are those challenges that we are seeing either as kids or as parents?
So I think that we have, as a society, evolved a great deal. There are so many pros and cons to technology developing, the fact that we've got information at our fingertips. And I think it's no great surprise. And I think every parent is wrestling with this challenge of how can technology be good? How can information at the touch of, the tips of our fingers be an amazing thing? It can really help our children to learn. We've got instant information that is there for us. But there is also the flip side. So you've got your pros and cons, right, to everything in terms of development and evolution. So yes, you've got the technology, you've got the social media, but you've also got, I think, really critically, and it feeds into what Sunitha and Ruben were saying, this idea of the relationship. What are our touch points? What are our relationships with our children? What do we want them to be? And I'm not sure that parents are consciously doing that as much as maybe they could, because there might be a bit more of a responsibility that parents need to take on to do that. So, we do all the basics now. We can do the basics really well. We can feed, clothe, take our children to lots of different activities, but how much quality time do we spend with our children? We are rushing around from one thing to another. I love that sort of busy mother idea. We rush out the door, not just every day to take them to school, but from one activity to another. We think it'd be good for their development. And I agree with that. I think every opportunity children have to experience new things, to figure out what they like, what they don't like, is a really great bonus. But where is the balance? Because inactivity, that's great for our brains. But where is the calm? Where is the stop? Where is the connection? Where is the sense of, okay, let's absorb all of this. Let's figure out, well, are you really doing the things that you like to do? Are there other things you need to do? What are the ways in which you're feeling quite stressed because you're running around and doing so many things? But actually, do we need to just stop and take stock sometimes? So I think, everyone likes to say they're busy. I'm not sure that is the right motto for us and our children to be living our lives by. So,
Sunitha, what can you say to that? The challenges that we're seeing with kids these days?
I think we've really got to take into account this whole COVID environment and what the kids have gone through the pandemic. And I'm seeing it in my own kids where now things are opening up. And I remember, and I think it kind of sums it up, my son had to do a self-portrait as a piece of homework over lockdown. And one side of it, he had to write what are his good quality points, and another side that what things that might make him wobble. And he said, Mummy, give me your phone, started drawing the picture and looking through his pictures and started crying. And I could see, and I said, what's wrong? Like, why are you crying? He goes, Mummy, what life used to be like. We'd do so many things. We'd meet people, we'd go to restaurants, we'd have our time, snuggle time. And then he goes, but what has my brother had? He goes, he was 2 and he was communicating, but his last 2 years has been lockdowns, bubbles, isolation. And we were going to a restaurant recently because things opened up, and he goes, Deanne, you don't know the restaurant rules, do you? Because you haven't been to restaurants. Mummy taught me when I was little. And it's
dear. Yes.
It's not sharing with toys, being able to regulate themselves because they've been in the same environment, no new vocabulary, no new experiences,
no social interaction.
No, and you kind of see it because they don't know how to share. They're quite possessive over their own things because that's what they've had for this time. They've not been outside to go and share their ball with somebody else because it was them in the house. And you kind of start to see it when things are opening up now, and they have to regulate. They have to start to understand, why am I feeling like this? And we use a color-coded system in our house, which are the zones of regulation. So if they're getting really fiery, it's like the Inside Out characters. you're red, right? Let's kind of bring it down to the green zone. Okay, I can see you're wobbling now. We're getting into the yellow zone here. If you're sad, you're blue. And sometimes the kids will go, Mum, I've had a blue day at school today because of X, Y, and Z. And we'll have those discussions at night and stuff to say, okay, so how can we make tomorrow better? What can we do? And I think they're all really struggling with that because they're not being able to express themselves. You know, the vocabulary, the social interaction, the sharing, it's been so limited.
However, you've worked out a system within your household within which you can actually do that, which is absolutely splendid. So there's certainly something to take away from this discussion, that there are ways and means around it, simply setting up a structure. Now, if you have just joined us, welcome to the Great Big Indian Wellness Show. And I'm Tony Patty, today joined by Anjali Patel, Sunita Shah, and also Rupin Rush as well. And we're talking about Kids Happy Corner and wellness for kids as well. How to install happiness, social integration, maybe even confidence within their lives that perhaps they're lacking of. Now, Rupin, if I can ask you about problems not being tackled from an early age where children are concerned, and then continuing with those psychosomatic problems within their minds, bodies, souls, within themselves, and perhaps problems which parents are not seeing and being able to deal with. What is your take on that?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I think that part of growing is about experiencing new things and essentially having your mind blown constantly. And the safety blanket is that your parents are there to help you understand the world and to map your progress. When a child is, very young and they're coming face to face with something unknown for the first time, they might get a nightmare about it. They might be terrified. They might hide behind mum or dad's leg. And then their parent will, just speak to them and say, well, this is something that's actually quite normal that a human being is likely to interact with on a daily basis. It's not something that you need to be scared about. And so just bringing the unknown world into the known is what parents are able to do for their children. And so really recognizing that that's a fundamental role of the parent's job can help the parent to dedicate a lot of time to that, and to recognize that if they don't dedicate time to helping comprehend the universe, then the child is left having to try to understand all of the world by themselves. And what quite often the parent is leaving the child to understand the world by themselves because the parent is still going through their own emotional turmoil, and they're still dealing with their own issues that they haven't truly come to terms with from their own life. Perhaps they're suffering from some grief.
Wow, that's incredible. That's very powerful. What are the signs, Rupin? What are the signs?
Well, I would say that one of the signs would be if the child feels that they have to emotionally be there for the parent, then when the child is taking on that role of having to console and take care of the parent's emotional well-being rather than the other way around. And if the child never seems to complain or they don't seem to have any issues, like these might be trauma responses for a child who's suffering from essentially emotional neglect. It's not that they don't have caring parents, and it's not that they're not around. It's just that the parents don't enter the child's world, try to understand where they are, and then try to help them to understand how to get to where they need to next.
That's really incredible, really powerful stuff. I'm going to give all three of you, for instance, Anjali, Sunita, and Rupin. There was a child who's in school and they're having problems at school, either with their friends, either bullying, victimization, or just simply being sidelined. The child does not know how to communicate this and bring this out into the open. And they feel and they wish that they could do that, but there's nobody to talk to, either out of embarrassment or just being shy about it or being scared. These are all psychological problems that the child will face during growing up. Perhaps it's a situation with bullying. And they need to bring that out into the open to discuss with their parents and their siblings to say, hey, I've got a problem here. how do I deal with it? Because they're going to grow up with that problem within their minds, in the back of their minds, only to recall it at later stages in life, where it'll actually hinder their development and thought processes as well. I'll tell you what, I speak from experience. All three of you, I throw that open to you.
Well, this is something that's actually become quite dear to me recently, because I found out my niece was being bullied, and it started in secondary school. And I think bullying now is in such different formats. The kids are on WhatsApp. There's the whole social media where relationships and things are so transparent. So there's kind of so many tiers to kind of, maybe when we were at kids and things happened to us, to what they kind of experience. And I think, you know, the first signs are that withdrawal, showing disinterest to go places and kind of do things. And I think as parents, I think, Anjali, I think you put a really good point in, is A to B, the week is planned, the diary's in, there's kickboxing, there's fencing, there's this, that, and the other to do. But when do you as a parent take a step back to really talk to your child? And I think, you know, that there's key points within the day that things are happening, but I use a lot of kind of nighttime before we go to bed. So before we do the bedtime stories, it's right, let's lie there. Let's score our day out of 10 today. How was your day? What do you think went well? How could we do something better tomorrow?
So you're bringing it out of them. You're having a discussion with them. So they're comfortable to discuss that with you. Anjali, is it something that you would subscribe to?
It is, and I do something similar with my children. There's either a morning on the way to school, and what went well yesterday. What are you going to try and do today? There are some lovely. I think the nighttime is a really important time to connect, because there's a bit of a chance to reflect. There's a chance to also release emotions. So I'll come to sort of some yoga bits in a minute, but I think the release of emotions, sometimes using storytelling, can be really helpful. So if I do notice that my children are feeling, they're not quite themselves, there are some beautiful books that you can get that are helping to illustrate stories without it getting too personal, because I think sometimes getting the children to open up and communicate, it can feel a bit like a sort of blame culture. There might be something wrong with me. And so taking things to that sort of third person level can help release that a little bit.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about the yoga side of things, the world of children's yoga, because we're very keen to learn about that today.
Okay, so from a practical perspective, there are things that are going on in a child that are stopping them from feeling that they can express themselves. Two areas in their body, I would say, probably feel quite tight and quite tense. One is the center of expression that we call our throat chakra. And for children to feel that they can easily voice, write, draw, whatever form of expression might be for them. So sometimes it's simple breathing exercises, like buzzing like a bumblebee, like a humming exercise. For younger children, we'd say buzz like a bumblebee, but for older children, it would be humming, or even humming and singing some sort of song can help to release that sense of, I need to hold things back. How do we help them to release that? So breathing, some sort of breathing techniques can help with that, specifically targeted at the throat zone. And then there are other areas in the body, for example, across the heart and chest area, where sometimes they can feel tight across their tummies, where they can literally do a stretch. Anything that we feel we're holding things back, you can literally, I'm going to clench my hands, because you can almost feel that children are holding things in. So, opening heart, sort of back bends, forward bends, crunching the tummy, open the heart. And something really simple that I love doing with children is an exercise called tense and release. So through any part of their body, the hands are what you can see I'm doing, but getting them to tense really hard, but then letting go. And so through that, demonstrating, that they can let go of anything that's being held within them. And sometimes that can help to release.
Excellent. Rupin.
Yes, that's beautiful. I really love those yoga tips there. I was just thinking about how much we don't feel like we have permission to really express ourselves, and through our voice and through our body, that we work so hard to not be noticeable and to play it small, so that we essentially don't don't bother anybody with all of our problems. And I think when it comes to the teenager that's getting bullied at school, it's never too late to consciously be there for your child. There's never a point where it's too late. But if we look maybe at the earlier years and say, like, for the last 12 years, have I really given my child permission to say when something's bothering them? Have I allowed them to hold their own boundaries with the people that are around them, including the parent themselves? And has the boundaries always been one way, that the parent will dictate to the child exactly the way that things are supposed to be? Then the child has to politely comply. And if they dare to say, I hate you, mum, or like, you're so annoying, dad, that they will be grounded for 2 weeks. And so now you've got a situation where there's a child who's at school who knows that their rightful place in their consciousness is victim and not allowed to speak up for themselves. Then when they come face to face with, an encounter with a bully, they don't have the tools and the equipment to really be able to
deal with it, to face the situation.
To stand up.
It's such a sad situation to be in, and such a demeaning situation to be in as well. This is the Great Big Indian Wellness Show, and we are joined today on our special session, which is called Kids Happy Corner. And we are joined by Anjali Patel, Sunita Shah, and Rupin Raj. We have a few minutes before we close the show today, but just before I do that, what about schools, Anjali? Are schools doing enough to help kids with being happy and their self-consciousness?
So I do think that in recent years, there has been a lot more openness and a lot more skills that have been developed through teachers in terms of teaching mindfulness skills, that real recognition that we do need to value each child where they are at. Whatever school year they might be in, there are going to be a range of developmental factors, and they do really need to appreciate each individual child. So I do see a lot more mindfulness being taught in schools, a lot more breathing exercises, a lot more talking about how you feel, and again using sort of storytelling in that context. I think that there's always more to be done. I think we're at the start of this journey, and I think it is kind of quite early days. It's been sort of 2 or 3 years since I've really started seeing a lot more mindfulness in schools.
Sunita Shah, what is your take on this?
Seeing it, 'cause I work in schools as well, and I work in a special school with teenagers with emotional behavioural difficulties. I think even looking at the curriculum now, there's a lot more that's happening. And I think one thing that was lovely when my boys got back to school, the teachers were like, just throw the academics out for a month. They don't need to know the planets and the things. Let's get the kids grounded. Let's get them forming relationships again. And they did great parts of a majority of the school day just working on the children's mental health. And they were journaling. They did it like a lovely positivity jar, that they'd put a comment about a friend and put it in a jar and boost their sort of friends' confidence. And I think that was so important, because I've never been a mum that wants my kids to be Einsteins. As long as you go with a smile on your face, you've got friends around you, and then you enjoy your day and be who you are, that's all your mummy wants you to be. And I think that's great, not putting that pressure on them being this reader and pushing them to tutor to do X, Y, and Z, because we forget so much. There's a balance between interpersonal communication skills and, yes, that load of kind of academic progress. And, parents sometimes have a shift in, right, actually, I want my kids to have all the straight A's. Let's tutor them. Let's do this and do that. And you'll get parents, because everybody is different, will see the academic importance of their child's development. And like I said, everyone's individual. And I'm from a very, go out and get dirty, play in the sand. I'm sure I did till 7. We turned out okay. And there's so much more pressure from preschool, where they're learning the phonics. They're starting to read. I'm sure we didn't start to read till reception year 1. Now in nursery, they're writing their name, they're learning their phonics. So the communication and academic load from so early on is so much more.
Rupin Raj, are schools doing enough?
Well, I would say simple answer is no, and that's because school isn't really designed to engage with that part of learning and development. And like Sunita said, it's all in the balance. And children, as much as you would like their lives to be in flow and constantly just being who they want to be, they also really benefit from the sort of the boundaries that school provides and the restrictions on the way that they behave. It helps them to socialize so that they can engage with other people in a healthy way. So I think school wasn't ever designed for people to grow the parts of their brain and their being which involve creativity and engagement with their feelings and with themselves. Because if you have 30 children in the class and 10 of them don't feel like doing maths right now, but they want to draw, and if you just like were totally in the conscious realm and you said, okay, well, if you want to draw, then draw, then it doesn't quite work with what school is trying to output. So it's something that we're hoping to, we'll work towards changing and put mindfulness practices into school. But if it's then regimented and you're told you must meditate from 11 until 12 every single day, then it's doing the exact opposite of what the meditation is intended to do. And we need to sort of be flexible and free about it, which is much easier to do at home than it is at school.
And it becomes very institutionalized as well, doesn't it?
I could say something there, and I think some are getting it right, because in my child's school at the moment, in the morning we've got the JJ's yoga cards, and I took them into the school, and they've been doing both classes, kind of yoga poses and stuff in the morning to get ready for learning. They've started to do some kind of like wiggle songs and stuff for the kids to get ready to learning. But like Rupen said, it's in that time of day, isn't it? And one thing I like is Friday afternoons in our kids' school is golden time. You choose what you want to do, how you want to express yourself, who you want to play with, what activities that we've got to do. And that whole session on a Friday afternoon is so child-led. And I think, they're starting to see, and I've seen this, not in every school I work in, but just seeing the benefits it has on my kids, having that level of structure that in the week we're going to do this, but by Friday afternoon, we're going to be able to choose what we want to play with who we want to play with, either draw, write, or sit and watch a film that they've kind of put on. So I think, there's ways and means of integrating in school, but like you said, it is a school, but we want to get as much.
It's down to individual schools, and as we heard Anjali say earlier on, it's something which is in development. We really are running out of time, so I'm going to ask all three of you. First of all, starting with you, Anjali, in 30 seconds, share some of your techniques for a daily routine on keeping your kids happy.
Okay, so my technique number one is deep breathing. So 3 deep breaths in the morning, followed by a sun salutation, and then off you go to school. And then in the evening, it's breathing again, a downward facing, some sort of stretch to release tension, and off you go to bed.
Fantastic, lovely. Sunita Shah.
I think positive affirmations, to say 3 nice things about yourself in the morning. If challenges come, if things don't go right, I always teach kids if you get things wrong, it's great, because you learn by your mistakes, knowing that it's okay to get things wrong, and being able to have that little time at the end of the day to either use a positivity jar or a journal to say what has gone really well, because they can focus on that one thing that went bad, but they've actually done 20 things that was amazing. So to really showcase the things that they're winning on as well.
Excellent. Rupin Raj.
Yeah, my tip would be to do your own emotional work as an adult, as a parent, so that you can do some journaling, some therapy, some work on yourself, and meditation, so that you can engage and approach your children in completely clear of your own emotional baggage, so that you can be present with them on their journey and help them to understand all the big feelings that they're going through for the first time.
Anjali Patel, founder, facilitator and storyteller. Sunita Shah, author and speech language therapist. And Rupin Raj, speaker and conscious parenting coach. Thank you all so much for your very kind time and excellent advice that you've shared with us here today on the Great Big Indian Wellness Show. And thank you for your very kind time. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much. Thanks.